Marcus Chen had always been a night security guard at the abandoned warehouse district on the outskirts of Denver. The job was quiet, predictable, and paid just enough to cover his bills. He liked the solitude, the empty streets, and the way the stars looked clearer away from the city lights. That October night started like any other, with him making his rounds through the maze of old buildings, checking locks and shining his flashlight into dark corners. The air was crisp and cold, carrying the smell of rust and old concrete. Marcus pulled his jacket tighter as he walked between two towering warehouses, their broken windows like hollow eyes watching him pass. He had worked this route for 3 years, and nothing exciting had ever happened. Sometimes he found homeless people seeking shelter, but they always left peacefully when he asked. At exactly 2:47 a.m., everything changed. A brilliant white light suddenly filled the narrow alley, so bright that Marcus had to shield his eyes. The light came from above, silent and overwhelming. His first thought was that it must be a police helicopter, but there was no sound of rotors, no wind pushing down on him. The light grew brighter, and then, as suddenly as it had appeared, it vanished. Marcus blinked, trying to clear the spots from his vision. The alley was dark again, lit only by a distant streetlight. But something was different. Where moments before there had been only empty pavement, now there was a small figure huddled against the warehouse wall. Moving cautiously, Marcus approached with his flashlight raised. What he saw made him stop in his tracks. It was a child, or something that looked like a child. But unlike any child he had ever seen, the being was roughly the size of a 6-year-old human, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the flashlight beam. Its eyes were large and dark, taking up much of its face, and when it looked at Marcus, he felt a strange sensation in his mind, like gentle fingers touching his thoughts. The childlike being was clearly injured. Dark purple liquid seeped from wounds on its arms and legs. It was shaking. Whether from cold or fear or pain, Marcus couldn't tell. Despite every rational part of his brain screaming at him to run, to call for help, to do anything but approach this impossible creature, Marcus found himself kneeling beside it. The being made a sound, soft and musical, like wind chimes in a breeze. Marcus didn't understand the words, but he understood the meaning. The child was afraid. It was hurt. It needed help. Marcus had always been the kind of person who helped. When his sister's kids needed someone to watch them, he was there. When his elderly neighbor needed groceries carried up 3 flights of stairs, he did it without being asked. Now, faced with something that challenged everything he thought he knew about the world, his instinct to help overrode his fear. He reached out slowly, letting the being see his empty hands. The child creature tilted its head, studying him with those enormous eyes. Then, to Marcus's amazement, it reached out a thin, delicate hand and touched his fingers. The moment their skin made contact, Marcus felt a jolt of connection. Images flashed through his mind, a ship traveling through stars, other beings like this child, danger approaching, the need to hide. The warehouse wall behind them suddenly exploded in a shower of concrete and dust. Through the hole came figures in black armor, moving with inhuman speed and precision. They weren't human. That much was clear from their size and the way they moved. One raised what looked like a weapon toward the child. Without thinking, Marcus threw himself over the small being, shielding it with his body. He felt heat pass over his back, heard a sound like tearing metal. Pain bloomed across his shoulders and spine. More explosions, more heat, more pain. Marcus pressed the child closer to the ground, trying to make them both as small as possible. He could hear the armored figures speaking in clicks and whistles, could feel their heavy footsteps approaching. The child beneath him was making soft, frightened sounds. Marcus's vision was starting to blur from the pain, but he held his position. He didn't know why this child was being hunted, didn't understand anything about the situation, but he knew he couldn't let them hurt it. More weapons fired. The concrete around them shattered and sparked. Marcus felt impacts across his back, each one sending waves of agony through his body. The child's small hands gripped his shirt, and through their touch, he felt its terror and gratitude mixed together. The sounds of battle intensified. Marcus heard new voices different from the attackers. These sounds were more musical, like the child's voice, but deeper and more commanding. The ground shook with impacts, the air filled with smoke and the smell of ozone. Marcus's strength was failing. He could feel warm liquid spreading beneath him. Knew it was his own blood. The pain was overwhelming now, making it hard to think. The last thing Marcus remembered was the child's hand touching his face, those large eyes looking into his with an expression that transcended species. He felt a strange warmth spreading through his body, different from the burning pain of his wounds. Then darkness took him, and Marcus Chen knew nothing more. Consciousness returned to Marcus slowly, like surfacing from deep water. First came the awareness of breathing, then the sensation of lying on something soft. There was no pain, which confused him. He remembered pain, remembered the burning across his back, the feeling of his life draining away. But now there was only a strange, pleasant warmth throughout his body. He tried to open his eyes and found it difficult. When he finally managed, the world that greeted him was unlike anything he had ever imagined. He was in a vast chamber with walls that seemed to be made of living pearl, shifting between colors he had no names for. The ceiling curved high above, displaying what looked like a view of space itself, stars and nebulas swirling in impossible patterns. But it was what surrounded his bed that made Marcus's breath catch. Dozens of beings stood in perfect formation around him. They were tall, perhaps 7 or 8 feet, with the same pale blue skin as the child he had protected. Their faces were angular and beautiful in an alien way, with those characteristic large eyes that seemed to hold the depth of oceans. Each wore armor that looked like it was grown rather than made, organic curves of silver and blue that moved with their bodies. At the foot of his bed stood 3 beings who were clearly leaders. Their armor was more elaborate, with symbols that glowed softly across the chest plates. The center figure stepped forward, and when it spoke, Marcus understood the words perfectly, though he knew the being wasn't speaking English. "Marcus Chen of Earth," the being said, its voice carrying harmonics that made it sound like a choir. "You have slept for 7 days while our healers repaired your body. We are in your debt." Marcus tried to sit up and found that he could, easily. His body felt better than it had in years. He looked down at himself, expecting to see bandages or scars, but his skin was unmarked. Even old scars from his youth were gone. Where am I?" Marcus managed to ask, his voice rough from disuse. "You are aboard the vessel Light of Arcturus, in orbit around your planet," the leader replied. "I am Commander Ashran Vel. The child you saved is my daughter's daughter. Your act of selflessness has prevented a tragedy that would have echoed across star systems." The commander gestured, and the ranks of soldiers parted. Through them walked a smaller figure, one Marcus recognized immediately. The child he had shielded looked healthy now, its wounds healed, wearing a smaller version of the pearl-like armor. Beside the child walked what must have been its mother, her hand resting protectively on the small one's shoulder. The child broke free and ran to Marcus's bedside, climbing up with surprising agility. Those large eyes looked into his again, and the child placed a small hand over Marcus's heart. This time, when the images came, they were clearer. Marcus saw a civilization among the stars, peaceful and advanced. He saw the child playing in gardens that floated in space. He saw the attack, rebels from their own kind who believed in genetic purity, who saw the child as an abomination because of mixed heritage. "Her name translates closest to Dawn Singer in your language," the mother said, approaching the bed. She is the first successful joining of our race and another. Some among us fear what this means for our future. The extremists who attacked her seek to prevent change by eliminating those who represent it. Marcus looked around the room at the assembled army. All of these soldiers, for one child, Commander Ashran Vel's expression grew stern. She is not just one child. She represents the future of our species. For too long, we have remained isolated, believing ourselves above the younger races. Dawn Singer proves we can grow, can become more than we are. Your protection of her, knowing nothing of this, risking everything for a stranger, it shames those among us who would do her harm. The child, Dawn Singer, made that musical sound Marcus remembered from the alley. Her mother smiled. She says you have a protector's heart. She felt it when you covered her. She knew you would not let them take her, even if it cost your life. I'm just a security guard, Marcus said, feeling overwhelmed. I saw a hurt kid. Anyone would have done the same. No, the commander said firmly. We have observed your species for generations. Many would have fled. Many more would have stood aside, choosing their own safety. You chose differently. This choice has consequences. A new figure entered the chamber, elderly by the way it moved, wearing robes instead of armor. It approached Marcus's bed and studied him with ancient eyes. The healing we performed was not simple, the elder said. Your injuries were beyond your body's ability to repair. We had to make adjustments. You are still human, Marcus Chen, but you are also more than you were. Marcus felt a chill run through him. What do you mean? Your cells now repair themselves at an accelerated rate. Your lifespan has been extended considerably. Your strength, speed, and senses have all been enhanced. Consider it compensation for your sacrifice and preparation for what comes next. What comes next? Marcus asked, though he was afraid of the answer. The commander straightened. The extremists who attacked Dawn Singer will not stop. They know she survived, know she is protected. They will come again, and when they do, they will target not just her, but anyone who aided her. Your world, Marcus Chen, is now part of this conflict whether you wish it or not. Marcus looked at the child still sitting beside him, her small hand holding his. He thought of Earth, of his sister and her kids, of billions of people who had no idea that alien civilizations existed, much less that they were now in danger because of his actions. We offer you a choice, the commander continued. We can return you to your life, remove your memories of these events, and hope the extremists never learn of your involvement. Or you can accept our protection, join us in keeping Dawn Singer safe, and help us prevent a war that could destroy both our peoples. The room fell silent. All eyes were on Marcus. He looked at Dawn Singer, saw trust in those enormous eyes. He thought of how she had felt in that alley, small and frightened and hunted. He thought of how he had felt in that moment of decision, knowing only that he had to help. I've already made my choice, Marcus said quietly. I made it in that alley. I'm not changing it now. Dawn Singer made a sound that could only be joy, throwing her thin arms around Marcus's neck. Her mother smiled, an expression that was surprisingly human, despite her alien features. The commander nodded with what looked like approval. Then rise, Marcus Chen, protector of Dawn Singer, friend to the Arcturus Coalition. Your new life begins now. 6 months had passed since Marcus Chen woke up aboard an alien vessel. 6 months of training, learning, and adapting to a reality that still sometimes felt like a dream. He stood now in the observation deck of a hidden facility in the Colorado mountains, watching the sun set over peaks that looked the same as they always had, even though everything else in his life had changed. The Arcturus Coalition had established the base decades ago, a secret outpost for observing Earth and protecting it from threats humanity didn't even know existed. Marcus was one of only 12 humans who knew about it, each chosen for their unique acts of courage or compassion toward off-world visitors. He wore the modified armor they had given him, lightweight and flexible, appearing to be normal clothing until activated. "Marcus, Dawn Singer is asking for you," a voice said behind him. He turned to see Dr. Sarah Martinez, a former NASA scientist who had been recruited after she helped save a crashed scout pilot in the Mojave Desert. She had adapted to their new reality faster than most, throwing herself into studying coalition technology. Marcus found Dawn Singer in what they called the Harmony Room, a chamber designed to feel like the gardens of her mother's home world. She was practicing what her people called light weaving, creating patterns of energy in the air with her hands. In the 6 months since the alley, she had grown, now looking more like a human 8-year-old. Her skin had darkened slightly, becoming more lavender than blue, and she had learned to speak English along with a dozen other Earth languages. "Uncle Marcus," she called out, the title she had chosen for him. The energy patterns dissolved as she ran to him. "Mother says the bad ones are getting closer. Is it true?" Marcus knelt to her level. He had learned not to lie to her. Dawn Singer could sense deception as easily as humans could see color. "Yes, little one, but we're ready for them." It was true. The extremist faction, calling themselves the Pure Line, had been probing Earth's defenses for months. They sent scouts, tested response times, looked for weaknesses. Each time, the coalition forces and their human allies had turned them away. But everyone knew these were just preparations for a real assault. Dawn Singer's expression grew serious, making her look older than her years. "They hate me because I'm different. Because my father was from the Vega colonies." "They're afraid of change," Marcus corrected gently. "You represent a future where their old ideas don't matter anymore. That scares them." "Are you afraid?" she asked. Marcus considered the question. 6 months ago, he would have been terrified. But the enhancements the coalition had given him were more than physical. His mind processed information faster, his reflexes operated at superhuman levels, and he had access to tactical knowledge from a dozen different species. More than that, he had purpose now. "I'm afraid of failing you," he admitted. "But I'm not afraid of them." An alarm echoed through the facility, a harmonious sound that managed to convey urgency without causing panic. Marcus's armor activated automatically, the casual clothes appearance shifting to reveal the pearl-like protective suit beneath. Dawn Singer's eyes widened. "Alert status confirmed," Sarah's voice came through the communication system. "Multiple breach points detected. This is not a drill." Marcus took Dawn Singer's hand. "Remember what we practiced. Stay with me until we reach the safe room." They moved through the facility's corridors, other defenders joining them. Marcus saw familiar faces. Tom Washington, a former Navy SEAL who had saved a coalition diplomat, Dr. Yuki Tanaka, who had hidden an injured alien child in Tokyo for weeks while it healed, Maria Santos, who had given up her career as a prosecutor to help establish legal frameworks for eventual human-alien relations. The facility shook as something impacted the mountain above them. The Pure Line had found them at last. Marcus could hear the defense systems activating, energy weapons that humanity wouldn't develop on their own for centuries humming to life. They were almost to the safe room when the wall ahead of them exploded inward. Pure Line soldiers poured through, their armor darker than the coalition forces, marked with symbols of genetic superiority. Marcus pushed Dawn Singer behind him, his enhanced reflexes taking over. The first attacker moved faster than any normal human could track, but Marcus was no longer normal. He met the soldier mid-strike, coalition combat training merging with his human instincts. His armor absorbed an energy blast that would have vaporized his old body. He struck back, his enhanced strength sending the attacker flying. More soldiers came. Marcus fought with a fluidity he couldn't have imagined months ago, protecting Dawn Singer while she used her own abilities to deflect attacks. Despite her youth, she was not helpless. Energy shields sparked to life around them, her heritage giving her powers that neither pure human nor pure Arcturian possessed. The battle raged through the facility. Coalition forces arrived, turning the corridors into a maze of light and sound. Through it all, Marcus kept Dawn Singer close, moving steadily toward the safe room. He took hits meant for her, trusted his armor and enhancements to keep him fighting. They reached a junction where Commander Ashran Vel was coordinating the defense. The commander's armor showed battle damage, but his bearing remained strong. "The Pure Line brought more forces than we anticipated," he said. "They mean to end this today." "Then we end it first," Marcus replied. The commander studied him, then nodded slowly. "You have learned much, Marcus Chen." "Very well. Dawn Singer, are you prepared to show them what you truly are?" The child stepped forward, her young face determined. "They think I'm weak, because I'm mixed. They're wrong." What happened next, Marcus would struggle to describe for the rest of his extended life. Dawn Singer began to glow, not with one type of energy, but with a harmony of both her heritages. The light spread from her, touching every defender, strengthening them, healing wounds, renewing their resolve. When the light reached the Pure Line soldiers, they stumbled, their armor systems confused by frequencies they couldn't process. "Now!" Commander Ashran Vel ordered. The defenders pressed their advantage. Marcus fought beside aliens and humans, united in protecting a child who represented the future of multiple species. The Pure Line, faced with the reality of what Dawn Singer could do, began to falter. Their ideology couldn't explain her power, couldn't dismiss her as weak or corrupted. The leader of the Pure Line assault force broke through the combat, heading straight for Dawn Singer. Marcus intercepted him, their armor clashing with sounds like thunder. This was no ordinary soldier, but a true believer, enhanced with forbidden technology, driven by fanatical purpose. They fought through the junction, neither giving ground. The Pure Line leader was skilled, experienced, and utterly committed to his cause. But Marcus had something the fanatic didn't. He had something worth protecting, not just something to destroy. As Dawn Singer's light grew brighter, Marcus felt it feeding his strength. He thought of that night in the alley, of a choice made without hesitation. He thought of 6 months of watching this remarkable child grow, of seeing her bring together species that had never cooperated before. With a final surge of strength, Marcus broke through the leader's guard. His strike sent the fanatic sprawling, armor cracked and sparking. Around them, the other Pure Line soldiers were retreating or surrendering, overwhelmed by the united force of coalition and human defenders. "It's over," Marcus said, standing over the defeated leader. "Your Pure Line ends here. The future belongs to children like Dawn Singer, to cooperation, to growth." The fanatic's helmet had cracked, revealing a face not so different from the coalition soldiers. "This is not over," he gasped. "Others will come. The pure blood will not be diluted." "Then we'll stop them too," Marcus replied, "as many times as it takes." As security forces took the prisoners away, Dawn Singer approached the defeated leader. She knelt beside him, her small hand touching his armor. The fanatic flinched, but her touch carried no malice, only understanding. "I'm not a dilution," she said in her musical voice. "I'm an evolution. One day, you'll understand that." The battle was won, but Marcus knew the war for acceptance would continue. There would be other attacks, other challenges. But as he looked around at the defenders, human and alien working side by side, he felt hope. Dawn Singer had shown them all what was possible when different species joined together. Outside, the sun had set completely, and the stars were visible through the mountain's hidden viewports. Somewhere among those stars were civilizations that would soon have to choose. embrace change and growth, or cling to isolation and stagnation. Dawn Singer represented the first option, and Marcus would protect that choice with his life. "Uncle Marcus," Dawn Singer said, taking his hand again. "Thank you." "For what?" he asked. "For seeing me as just a scared child that night, not as an alien. For making the choice to help. For showing everyone that humans and Arcturians can be family." Marcus squeezed her small hand. "Family protects family," he said simply. As the facility began repairs and the Coalition fleet arrived to ensure no further attacks, Marcus Chen stood with his adopted niece and looked out at the stars. He had been a simple security guard once, walking empty warehouses and checking locks. Now he was a bridge between worlds, a protector of the future, a guardian of hope. The universe had become a much larger and more complicated place, but also one filled with more wonder than he could have imagined. And at the center of it all was a child who refused to be limited by the prejudices of any species, who would grow up to show them all that diversity was not weakness, but strength. Marcus smiled, thinking of how his life had changed because he chose compassion over fear in a dark alley. It was the best choice he had ever made, even if it meant an alien army had become his extended family. After all, family came in many forms, and sometimes the most important bonds were those you chose, not those you were born into. The war for Dawn Singer's future was far from over, but Marcus Chen would stand guard for as long as needed. He was no longer just a security guard. He was a guardian of tomorrow, and he wore that title with pride.